Hey, welcome back for day 3 of the Visions of Violence murder trial against Christopher Behall in the state of Iowa. Yes, lots of stuff to talk about on day 3, including what did the medical examiner find? Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. Yes, I've got more of this trial for you. What a difficult day. Not for anybody. Well, I guess it was difficult for the family in the courtroom because they had to sit through lots of photographs. Difficult for me because the footage was horrible. Oh my God. The volume, I had the volume up to 100% on my computer, and then it was lagging, and you would get this like through the whole thing. It was just torture, but I got it for you. I got it for you. Yes. So I don't know when this came up about the screwdriver, but it's there. They found the screwdriver somewhere in the apartment. I don't know how I missed that testimony. It must have been during the bebop and lag. But this is a case where Christopher Behall is on trial for the murder of his girlfriend, Taylor Escontrias. He gets into a single vehicle accident where he runs into a light pole out by the airport at approximately 1:45 a.m. on March 14th of 2024, just about a year ago. Almost exactly a year ago. We know this because we've got surveillance footage where the light pole goes out. He goes unconscious for a period of time. As the police arrive 11 minutes later at 1:55, he is regaining consciousness and not really answering questions appropriately. He can answer the questions. He's very emotionally labile, not showing any emotion at all, very flat affect. He thinks he's in the hospital. He very dazed and confused, and he's complaining of a wound in his abdomen, front end damage, terribly, because there was a concrete barrier surrounding this light pole that he ran into. So they take him to the hospital. He's got a stab wound in his lower abdomen, and they stitch him up. And the officer that is assigned to accompany him to the hospital, he decides he's going to tell him, hey, I'm seeing things, and I think I might have hit my girlfriend with a baseball bat. Could you go check on her? He wants a cell phone. The cell phone, it was left in his vehicle, so he doesn't know his girlfriend's phone number. But they find an address for him. They send an officer over to his address, and they do a welfare check, knock on the door. Nobody answers the first time. Then after he makes this little confession in the hospital, like gets a little bit more detailed, like, could you check and see if she's still alive? They actually enter the apartment when they go out a second time, and they find her body behind the front door. So on the stand on day 3, continuing his testimony, was the investigator, the deputy who did all the crime scene photographs, and he is still walking people through the rest of the photographs. That ends, and we find that at some point, like I said, the screwdriver gets found. I don't know. I didn't hear it, but apparently it's there. I've seen the box. I haven't seen the screwdriver. It's a Phillips head screwdriver, because on her body, we're going to hear the medical examiner testify that she had these like a star pattern stab wounds, consistent with a Phillips head screwdriver, which he said would have taken a lot of force to get that through the skin. Yeah, I can't even imagine. So we get a family practice physician on the stand who is the county medical examiner. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Medical examiners are pathologists. You did a family practice residency, and now you're the medical examiner. So apparently in Iowa, this is the way it works. They have these medical examiners that are called out to a scene when there's an unexpected death or that kind of thing. unexplained death. She gets called out to this scene at 6:30 a.m. on March 14th. She doesn't go out there till 10 o'clock because she says, I don't want to interfere with all the police have custody of the scene. I take custody of the body, but I don't want to go out there until they're done with, recording all the details that they need to record on the scene. But she goes out. Her duty is to go out and she does a full body examination. And in this case, Taylor was naked, so it wasn't that difficult to do. So she examines the entire body, and then she assists with getting it into putting the toe tag on, getting it into a body bag, sealed. They call a funeral home, and then they have the body taken to a place where it can be kept cool, until it can be transported to the state medical examiner, the pathologist guy, the state medical examiner, and he does the autopsy. She doesn't do autopsies because she's not a pathologist. So it's just weird. But maybe Iowa, I don't know a lot about Iowa. Maybe it's just not big enough for everybody to have a medical examiner that can do autopsies, is my suspicion. So Dennis Klein is the next person to take the stand. He is the person that did the autopsy with the state medical examiner. He might even be the state medical examiner. He doesn't do the autopsy for 4 days. He doesn't do it till March 18th. Probably busy doing other autopsies. I don't know. So the first thing, he describes an autopsy. What is it? And walks the jury through what to expect. The external examination of the body, he clips all the fingernails off of both hands for evidence collection to see if there's any foreign DNA. Foreign meaning anything other than Taylor's own DNA. Under the fingernails, which sometimes you find in these attack places. If they've attacked their attacker, they get that DNA under their fingernails. And I will fast forward and tell you there was nothing found under her fingernails other than her own DNA, because we're going to hear from the DNA guy later today. Then there was blood sent for toxicology, but we didn't hear the result. I didn't hear the result. It could have been through the bit bopping, but he was asked, did he collect it? Yes, he did. Later on, he was asked if he had the results, and he said he did, but we didn't hear it. And I'm assuming because it wasn't significant. I don't know. So then he goes through and he's describing all of these injuries from dozens of photographs that he took and that are being shown to the jury, not to us, but to the jury. And I was really having a hard time keeping up with all the different injuries. Like, she had so many injuries, and bless his heart, towards the end of his testimony, he gives us a summary. Like, yay, we have a summary. Okay, so I'm going to summarize because this was so gruesome. Like, he's innocent until proven guilty, but someone just attacked the hell out of this woman with a baseball bat, a knife, and a screwdriver. So the cause of death was multiple blunt force, which would be the baseball bat, and sharp force, which would be the knife and the screwdriver injuries. On her head, she had 15 lacerations, 1 abrasion and 1 contusion. Now, laceration is kind of like a stab wound goes in. A laceration kind of goes across like that. Abrasion is like if you would fall down and scrape your knee, you get an abrasion. And a contusion is a bruise. So on her back, she had 1 abrasion and 6 contusions. So 6 areas of bruising. In her upper extremities, she had 4 areas of bruising. Then we get to the sharp force injuries, and this is what did her in. She was stabbed 17 times with the knife, 6 in the neck. 1 of them hit the jugular vein. That would have been a fatal wound in and of itself, absent everything else. The jugular vein, internal jugular vein, it would have caused significant amount of blood loss, which we see throughout the apartment, that there was significant amount of blood loss. So 6 times in the neck, 7 times in the torso, which included one that went into her left chest wall, did not penetrate anything, any vital organs. Another one that went into the chest that penetrated the diaphragm, the lung. One of the injuries, these were the knife wounds. Her right and left ears were almost torn off from blunt force. And then one of the wounds went into the left lung and caused bleeding, and that would have been fatal. So, but then there was one of the knife wounds that actually severed the, let's see if I can explain it. There's this tissue that holds your head to your neck, to your spinal cord. And if that's severed, you're going to be paralyzed in some way if you happen to survive. This was severed in her case. Yeah. And had she survived, he said she would have had paralysis to some degree. Anyway. So she also had 2 stab wounds to her left and right hand, 2 each, which he said could have been defensive wounds, but you can't say for sure. So she may have been defending herself and got those stab wounds. The screwdriver, he found 23 wounds, 23, 9 in her head. And he kept calling them a star-like pattern. 3 in her neck, 6 in her torso, and 5 in her right upper extremity. Now, he didn't say this, but I can imagine that because only 2 of those wounds were fatal. But most of those wounds she was probably awake for and was going through this. And how horrendous for this family to have had to sit through that yesterday. And the entire time, the defendant, he cannot look at the screen. He is got his eyes closed and he is looking off to the side. He can't see it either. He can't even fathom that he's done this. So then they put the lead investigator on the stand very, very briefly, and then say they're going to recall him later. But for the limited purpose of saying, yes, I obtained buccal swabs from the defendant. And I also swabbed his knuckles because he had some blood on his knuckles. That's the buccal swabs where they go inside the mouth to get the DNA so that the DNA lab, where all of these items that were collected, the screwdriver, the knife, the baseball bat, the clothing, all that goes to this DNA lab. They need to have known samples. So they had a known sample that was collected at autopsy from Taylor Escontrias, the victim, and they had a known sample from the defendant, Christopher Behall. And this is the guy that collected it. So, and he's going to come back to the stand later on. Then we get the DNA criminalist who works for an independent lab, and he gets all this stuff, but he is not allowed to test every single thing that comes in there because they have limits. They can't test every single thing. So not everything that was sent was tested for various reasons. But really, suffice it to say, nothing that you weren't expecting to find. On the handle of the knife, he tested it and said that it was too weak to analyze, so no DNA was able to be determined on the handle of the knife, but the blade of the knife had Taylor Escontrias DNA. At some outrageous, they give proportions, septillion, 5 septillion, blah, 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 blah. It was pretty high. It's her blood. So then they tested the red T-shirt that Christopher Behall was wearing in a couple of different spots, and it all came back to be his blood. We know he had that cut on his lower abdomen that had to be stitched closed. Same thing on his shorts. 2 areas were tested. The right leg of the shorts did come back with Taylor Escontrias' blood on it. And then the other area had two major contributors, one being the defendant, the other one they could not identify the second contributor. It just wasn't enough to analyze. It could have been Taylor, it could not have been, we don't know. Then there was a black piece of clothing that was laying in the living room that had been collected as evidence, and then a pink shirt that had blood stains on it. Those were not tested. It was presumed that, yes, that's probably the defendants, or it's probably the victims, and we're going to find the victim's blood on it. So those were excluded from testing due to those limitations that they have. Then he tested the screwdriver. It was a black and red screwdriver Phillips had. He could not develop any profiles off of the grip of the screwdriver, but he tested some blood that was on the tip of the screwdriver, and that did match Taylor Escontrias, the victim. The baseball bat, the aluminum baseball bat, was tested in two areas, and both of them came back with Taylor Escontrias' blood. Then they had swabs from the knuckles of the defendant, and that was Taylor's blood on his knuckles, on his hands. Then there were, they kept referring to him as tent 1, tent 5, tent 7. What that is at various points in the apartment, they put these yellow markers up that have numbers on them. They call them tents. And each of those areas were swabbed for blood. And they all came back with Taylor's blood on them from various areas of the apartment, including a sample that was swabbed from the doorknob that also came back to Taylor Escontrias. There was hairs found in the apartment that were not tested because they were presumed to be hers. They already know what her DNA is. We don't need to know what the hair is, but she did have a couple of hairs in her hand that were collected, and those had roots, and you need the roots to be able to extract DNA. And those were her hairs. I thought, oh, maybe she got a good chunk of his hair. No, it was her own hair. Then the cell phone, I remember I told you there was a cell phone found on the bed, but there was no blood on the sheet, but there was blood on the phone. That blood did come back to be Taylor's blood. So let's see what else. There's more. The floor mats from the vehicle. That came back to be Christopher Behall's blood, DNA. The carpet underneath the floor mats was tested. That had two contributors to that blood, the defendant and someone unknown. Then they did a sexual assault kit on her. The medical examiner said he did one because she came in naked. She had a lot of trauma, so he felt like it was wise to do a sexual assault examination. But nothing foreign to Taylor was found. No other person's DNA was found, just Taylor's DNA on the sexual assault kit. And that's where they swab her mouth, they swab other private areas, and nothing came back that wasn't hers. So we can infer that she was not sexually assaulted during this attack. And finally, her fingernails that were collected at autopsy. Both hands, it was just hers. Her DNA. There was nothing foreign to her. No other person's DNA was found underneath her fingernails. I think I told you that earlier. So then the last person on the stand, they brought back that lead detective late in the day. So I'm going to go ahead and include the little bit of testimony he gets in yesterday with tomorrow's recap. What's today? It's Friday. Yeah. Monday's recap. Whenever I do it. But yeah, I think they're coming to a conclusion here with this lead investigator. He's probably going to be their final witness. I don't know that they would have many more witnesses other than him. So I will bring that to you when I get it, when I sift through that horrible video footage that they're putting out. My assumption is that they don't have very strong internet in this courthouse. That's my assumption. It's causing some problems with videotaping this entire 7 or 8 hour day. Anyway, Have a great day, everybody. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I don't charge you a thing. And consider becoming a member if you're already subscribed. I'd love to have you. And I will see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.